My name's Nicholas Houston. I'm the director of Visaustralia, and we're here today to discuss the skilled visa program. And we're also here to discuss some of the recent announcements by the Australian government in relation to the skilled visa program, and also the subclass 408 visa, and also an extension to work rights for student visa holders. Okay, so I might then get started with the introduction. So in terms of where the migration program is, the Australian government handed down its budget about 2 weeks ago, and the budget is the main economic statement of the Australian government every year. It sets out the policy framework and the agenda for the government and what money it's spending, how it is raising that money, and what new policies or funding programs it will run with. Okay, so in terms of the budget, the government made some comments about migration, and what it said is that it was going to hold the migration program, the permanent visa program, the numbers the same as the previous 4 to 5 years, and that is at 160,000 places. Okay, within that, there's been some further adjusting of the of where those visas will go. More visas will go to family visas and partner visas, and there will be fewer visas being allocated to the skilled visa program. So basically, we work, and most of our clients are looking to apply for visas through the skilled visa program. So in a sense, that is bad news, that there's been a slight cut of the numbers allocated to the skilled visa program. On the other hand, the government said that it is not going to open the border until July 2022, which is in slightly over 12 months from now. It's realised that it's popular to keep the border closed, and it also realises that it's not in control of the quarantine situation. There's been too many leaks and breaches of quarantine protocol that has allowed the virus back into Australia. And the second thing is that it wants for the vaccine program to be sort of more widely unfurled within the Australian community. So at the moment, it's happening pretty slowly, and not many people have been vaccinated, and we're quite a long way from knowing whether we will have herd immunity or not. So in the context of those two things, the government's not prepared to open the border in any significant way until next year. It might be that some international students who were already studying in Australia and got caught outside when they closed the border last year will be allowed back in, but new students and new migrants are not going to be able to come in until that date. So what that means is that there's no skilled visa program for people outside Australia. And it means that people who are already here are sort of placed in a strange advantage, because you are now the pool of people that the government is looking to apply for the skilled visa. Okay, so the skilled visa continues. The government continues to grant visas and invite people to apply for visas. The state governments continue with their nomination work, and the circus rolls on. But it rolls on only in relation to people who are already in Australia. And that is good news for people that are here, like you. Then the second thing, there's some expectation that the government will go back to a big Australia in perhaps 2023 or 2022, 2023. Migration is critical to economic growth, and for a whole lot of reasons, the government loves migration and would be looking potentially at more places becoming available for skilled migrants in the next 2 years. So I think it's quite favourable for people that are here, in that the program continues to be open and visas continue to be granted. And if you need to position yourself through study or, preparing accreditation applications, improving your English, to be able to apply for a skilled visa, there's every chance that if you follow the advice, do the right thing, prepare yourselves, you'll be able to successfully migrate. Okay, so in fact, that's a fairly positive message and in the midst of all of the confusion and uncertainty, I think in the medium to long term, the news is quite good. It's quite bright for people that are already here. Okay, so that's the update of the budget announcement and the broader issues within the migration program. In terms of other announcements, the government said that international students, if you're working in hospitality, aged care, tourism, health, and disability, that you can work full-time. So international students who are working in cafes and restaurants and clubs, and many of you are, can now in fact work full-time in those jobs. And if you're not working in hospitality and but want to work full-time, then you can find a job in hospitality and work those additional hours. So I know money is often tight, so that is a help. Maybe a help, that policy announcement. Okay, I mean, the government it's designed to help the small businesses in that sector of the economy, but in fact there's some direct assistance to students. Then the second announcement was that people who are working in hospitality, so either working in hospitality or have a job offer, are able to apply for a subclass 408 COVID visa. So again, this was a policy designed to help employers in that industry, but it really represents a significant loosening of the visa rules for the people that are here. Now, to be able to apply for one of these subclass 408 visas, you need to naturally come to the end of your student visa. So you can't suddenly say that you don't want to continue with your studies and want to apply for a COVID 408 visa until you're at the end of your course, basically. But the COVID 408, subclass 408 visa, it's a work visa that's valid for 12 months. Your partner will also, if you have one, will also be able to work full-time for 12 months. And similarly with the student visa, if you are the primary applicant working in hospitality, the full-time work rights extend to your partner as well. So your partner will always, in both cases, have the same work rights as you. Okay, so the 408 visa, yeah, it can be really convenient for people that whose student visas are expiring now or in the next 6 months. What it means to your visa strategy is that there's the option of staying in Australia to save money, basically, to work full-time in hospitality or tourism by and large, and save money and prepare yourself for studying at the second half of 2022. Okay, in most cases that work won't assist you migrate. It's only if you're looking to apply for accreditation as a chef or a cook or as a restaurant manager, and you have relevant qualifications to those occupations, that it would help you obtain the accreditation or apply for the skilled visa. If you're other kind of professional, engineer, computer professional, marketing, architect, whatever, it won't help your migration process. But of course, what it will do is just allow you to save money and improve your English. Some people, it will give an extra 12 months to improve your English to be able to apply for the skilled visa and save money, and it's helpful in that sense. Okay, so that gets back then to the issue of the visa strategy and needing to understand what you need to do personally to prepare to apply for the skilled visa. And yeah, if at this stage you've got any questions, I can keep talking, but if you have questions, please let me know and put them in the system and I can answer them. But otherwise, what you would need to do is to have your visa strategy defined and then start work on that. So In terms of the visa requirements, there's 4 legal requirements: age under 45 years old, a reasonable level of English, good enough to work in your occupation, and accreditation. And accreditation, it's the basic platform upon which the rest of the application is built. It's basically the way the Australian government looks at your qualifications and work experience to see whether it's more or less comparable to the qualifications and work experience of someone doing your job in Australia. Different occupations have different accrediting bodies. There's a whole lot of different rules as to what you need to do to get accredited, depending on your occupation, and it's an indispensable part of the visa process. The other thing is the occupation needs to be in demand in Australia. So this is where we get into the lists. The federal government has its medium and long-term list of occupations, but each state government as well has a list of occupations it will nominate. So nomination is now critical for applying for the visa, state nomination. It's a state nomination is just a permission, in fact, to apply for a state nominated visa. But that permission actually then produces an automatic invitation to apply for the visa. It gives you more points on the visa points test as well. But the critical thing is the invitation. So I guess as people are aware, you can't just apply for a skilled visa anymore. You have to be invited to apply. And basically the government is not issuing invitations at the moment, except perhaps to some very few medical and COVID-related occupations. But in a sense, everyone else needs to apply for state nomination. So again, we're at the situation that the state government policies are incredibly varied, and not all states are nominating people. And to take a step backwards, some of the smaller states have linked their nomination policy with the attempt to encourage international students to study in their state. So we all know that international education is a really profitable industry. And there's a competition, global competition for international students, and Australia is part of that, competing with Canada, United States, and New Zealand, and whoever else we have. And the way they compete is through giving people work rights and also the pathway to permanent residence. So in that context too, the smaller states, South Australia, Tasmania, Canberra, the Northern Territory, regional New South Wales, are also looking to attract international students away from Sydney, Melbourne and Brisbane by linking nomination and visa migration outcome to the fact that you have studied in the state for 12 months. In some cases, there's different policy on that. But so, for example, if you are accredited, have the right level of English, pass the visa points test, and have studied in Tasmania for 12 months, then you can apply for Tasmanian state nomination and the visa. So there's some variation there about what you need to do and whether you need to be working and whether you need to be working in your occupation. And there's some variation about what occupations are in demand in what state. So it's an area that is moving continually, and the policies are changing continually, but you need to understand or have a strategy for what you need to do to both be accredited, but then also what studies and where will open the door to state nomination and applying for the skilled visa. Okay, so we have a question. If the dependent is the one who is working in hospitality at the end of the student visa, can we apply for the new COVID visa to work full time? Okay, so I think you can. The dependent would then become the primary applicant for the subclass 408 visa. And then the student, the former student, would be the secondary applicant and could work full time as well. Only one person needs to be the primary applicant, meet the criteria, which is to be working in hospitality. And that will give both of you the ability to work full time for that year. Yeah, so that answers that question. And then again, we're back to that issue of needing a visa strategy, a long-term visa strategy to be able to then work towards that process of applying for the visa, in the context that the expectation is there will be visa places there, in the future, and people who do the right thing now, get the right advice, work through the process faithfully, will ultimately be able to apply for permanent residence. Okay, so I'd like to throw the floor open to further questions. I mean, really, this is now about you. I'm happy to provide whatever answers I can. And the time frame is as well, when we run out of questions, that'll be it. We can call quits to the seminar and go and have lunch. Okay, so we've got a question here. I had seen that to apply for a skilled visa, like the 190 or 491, to get state nomination, the person must be working in their field or something similar. It seems to me that the strategy to follow could be a little unstable. Well, and that's true. It is true because state governments have a tendency to change the policy. In terms of the advice, when we look at the issue, we're looking at options that don't connect working in your occupation with the visa outcome, because we all know that it's difficult to find a job in your occupation. Competing with Australian graduates and other international students, and both at the accreditation stage, if you need to work for 12 months in your occupation to get accredited, then that's not such a good thing. And also at the nomination stage, for example, South Australia had a good state policy in place, but now it looks like you have to be working for at least 3 months in your occupation to be able to apply. So that is a restrictive, sort of little bit risky policy, and in that case we would be recommending that people consider Tasmania or potentially consider the ACT, depending on your occupation. In the Northern Territory, there was an issue of needing to study for 2 years. So that was a longer period of time that you needed to study. And also that was the same in regional New South Wales. So there's some other factors that you need to take into account when looking at this state nomination issue. But there is that danger that you can prepare yourself to apply for state nomination and when the time comes, the policy has changed. Okay, for the skill assessment, if we have an Australian postgraduate education, do we still need to do it? Yes, you still need to do it. And I mean, it is fairly pointless that if you've got an Australian qualification, you need then to apply for accreditation. But the issue is that the accreditation processes are different for different organisations. So in some cases, it's just an automatic thing. You send your qualification off and you get the accreditation back within a week, no issue. Very straightforward. But in some cases, you then need to have worked in your occupation for 12 months. And this is where the graduate visa comes into play. And particularly we're talking about VETASES. So VETASES is the accreditation body for a whole lot of general occupations where there's not a separate accrediting body. Marketing specialists, internal auditors, construction project managers, hundreds and hundreds of occupations are accredited by VETASES. And to be accredited, you need 12 months of work experience in your occupation. Okay, so therefore, it's not just the Australian qualification that they're looking at, but also that work experience issue. And of course, on the graduate visa, it's either an 18-month visa or 2-year visa. And and so that then gives you time to do that work, obtain the accreditation, and apply for the nomination and the skilled visa. So that's answers to that question. Yes. Are there other questions out there? In terms of that, back to that instability in the visa system, recently the Australian government Australian Parliament has had an inquiry into skilled migration, and they opened the ability to make a submission to that inquiry, and Visaustralia made a submission. And one of the things that we mentioned, the key comment that we have on the visa system is that they need to calm down. There's been far too many changes in recent years, and the rate of policy change is defeating the purpose of the visa program. So I try to say, from the perspective of our clients and your perspective, we really just want to know what the rules are, and we want them to be in place for a period of time that we can then all adjust our situations to meeting those criteria. And in some ways, we don't care what the criteria are. We just want them to be stable and steady and clear, and we want the decisions to be made quickly, and we want the right to seek a review if there's a poor decision. So we say that as lawyers. I mean, we need a stable system with clear rules to be able to provide advice to people. Otherwise, it's crazy what we're trying to do. But most particularly, you need a system that enables you to prepare yourselves and have steady rules and to make a steady run at that application. So we prepared the submission. I'm happy to send it to people if you want. I mean, we're doing what we can to try and help in terms of that level of the policy development on your behalf. So it's part of our job as advocating for a better visa system, but that is a core issue. Okay, I'll finish the diploma next month. Can I apply for COVID visa? And after 6 months, can I apply for a skilled visa? I work in hospitality. I live in the Northern Territory. Yeah, so what that means is that you could apply for the subclass 408 visa, and that would then give you the 12 months work. Depends what your accredited occupation is, because if you're a chef or a restaurant manager, or could be accredited as a restaurant manager, that is, if you have a relevant qualification and that 12 months of full-time work experience in hospitality, for example, as a restaurant manager, that could result in accreditation, and that could result in a separate pathway to the visa. Otherwise, it would just be the income while you continue to work on the skilled visa process. But I mean, you've got to be accredited, and if there's any risk in that accreditation process, and I mean, honestly, it's about giving the documents to the accrediting body. It's evidence. It's all about evidence. You've got to prove that you worked in the occupation and it was full-time and that you were paid for your work. And you've got to have the company has to be prepared that you worked for to give a detailed reference letter. And we've seen time and time again that businesses, particularly in Latin America, have policies to not be helpful. In fact, their policy is to be as little helpful as they possibly can be, and not give an accurate letter reflecting the work that someone did. And so it can become difficult to put that evidence together. But if there's a problem with that accreditation, it may, in some cases, be possible to apply for accreditation as a restaurant manager, if that's your job in Australia, based on the 408, work on the 408 visa. But anyway, and then if you do have the 408 visa and suddenly can apply for the skilled visa because you've met the criteria, it might be English or some other factor that you need to meet, then you can jump into the skilled visa at any time. You're not stuck on that 408 visa, but can apply for any further visa. Either at the end of the year of work, it could be for another student visa, or it could be for the skilled visa directly, if that's where your situation is. Okay, then another question. What happens if I start a strategy and I follow it and suddenly, because the government changes the rules, I become ineligible? Okay, so there's taking a step back, there's been a whole lot of that happening in recent years, and particularly with people that studied accounting. People came into Australia to do accounting. Accounting was good because you didn't need work experience to be accredited. But all of a sudden, there was just thousands and thousands and thousands of accountants, international students, floating around looking for state nomination options. A whole lot of people came into Canberra to the ACT in 2017 because the policy was encouraging people to come in and to study for a year. They suddenly closed the program in Canberra, and there were some protests in front of the local parliament about that decision. And then the program was recreated and it's a fairer, more open program that we have now in Canberra. Then a lot of those accountants went down to Tasmania. And so there's quite a pool of people in Tasmania now looking to apply for state nomination there. Yeah, so it's a question then of, if that happens, what people have done is to apply for the graduate visa, then apply for another student visa. Student visas are almost invariably being granted now, but it was all just a way of saving time. And if those student visas were refused, people would apply for a review to the Administrative Review Tribunal. But of course, that process was taking perhaps 18 months to 2 years to get to the final review result. So people were in fact buying another, well, not buying, but able to access another 2 years of time in Australia, waiting for the AAT, Administrative Review Tribunal, to make its decision. And of course, in that time, people were able to apply for the skilled visa. So there's different strategies and ways of handling that if you get caught in that situation of not being able to apply for state nomination. And also it meant that people who studied in Sydney, Melbourne or Brisbane were able to get out of those cities and into these other states and then have time to actually do the things they needed to do to apply. But it gets back to the way the visa system is working at the moment. And that's why I just do want to reiterate as well that there is a real advantage about being here in Australia at the moment, because you are the pool of people that will be, they are looking to apply for permanent residence as opposed to people outside Australia. Okay, almost all of the documents for the skills accreditation as the ACS were good. The next step is to apply and hopefully get that approval. And then you'd be looking at state nomination policy and getting the right score in English and moving the application forward. So, and that's the normal course of events. It's often these application processes, they're rarely straightforward. It's always a little bit, it's always painful, bureaucratic, and a little bit stressful. That's what we've found. And I will just say as well that if it wasn't the case, then there wouldn't be an industry of migration advisors, because people could do it themselves. The fact that it is the way that it is, which no one likes, but it means that it's important to work with people, professional people. Okay, well, if we've run out of questions, then I've sort of more or less, from my perspective, given the updates that I wanted to give today. I think people who are in Australia are generally much more aware of the process and the issues than people who are outside Australia. So I won't go into the basic requirements for the visa more than I have done. If you've got further questions, then feel free to contact us, or if you're already working with us, we will keep pushing away. The takeaway message is that you should feel reasonably optimistic about your final chances of getting the visa. I mean, COVID, that was unexpected. And the government as well is made decisions that that create less certainty, which is not a good thing. But at the end of the day, they're committed to a big Australia, and they would want to get back to that as soon as they can. And that puts you in a good position. So if there's no further questions, we'll bring the event to a close. I'd like to thank you all for attending. I hope you found it helpful. If you know of other people that's in a similar situation, then feel free to send them to us for that first interview. Try and do our best to work out the strategy there. And one last question, which is the probability of a successful process. What's the common rate of successful cases? And here's a little secret. The rate of success for the visa process, it's over 98%. So, you know, it's rare that we ever have a visa application refused. And it's been that way for quite a long time. But the truth is that the battle occurs at the accreditation stage. You have your own internal battles with the English language. And then the other battle occurs with state nomination. So that's where the risk is. And if you just keep pushing away, every case is different, obviously, for those reasons. But if you keep pushing away, there's every chance. Like we've had maybe 10 visas granted in the last month. You know, it's always a minor miracle when it occurs, but it is occurring. People are getting their visas and able to get that stability to get on with their lives, their Australian lives. Yeah, so don't give up. Keep working, and yeah, feel free to get in contact with us if you've got particular questions, want other particular information. Okay, at that point, I'll say bye, adios. So my name's Nicholas Houston. I am the Director of Visaustralia, and I hope that you found this information helpful. Please be in touch if you've got further questions.